Picture this. It's 2008. The American financial system is collapsing. Banks are failing. The stock market is in free fall. In the middle of this chaos, China made a phone call that would change everything. They didn't invade. They didn't fire a single shot. They simply said, "We'll buy your debt." And just like that, the greatest wealth transfer in human history began. Today, China holds over $1 trillion of American debt. But here's what nobody's talking about. This isn't just about money. This is about power. This is about the slow, methodical dismantling of an empire. And it's happening right now, in plain sight, while most Americans have no idea. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into something massive: how China used America's own playbook against them, and why the empire that won the Cold War might lose the economic one. Let's get into it. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to a moment most people have forgotten. September 2008, Lehman Brothers has just collapsed. It's the largest bankruptcy in American history. Panic is spreading through Wall Street like wildfire. The Treasury Secretary is literally on his knees begging Congress for a bailout. The entire global financial system is hours away from complete meltdown. Now imagine you're sitting in Beijing, watching this unfold on CNN. You're a Chinese official, and you're seeing the country that calls itself the world's only superpower begging for spare change. What do? Most people think China helped America out of the goodness of its heart. They're wrong. China saw an opportunity, and they took it. See, here's what actually happened. In 2008, China was sitting on almost $2 trillion in foreign currency reserves. That's money they'd accumulated by selling cheap goods to American consumers for decades. Mountains of cash. But cash is just paper unless you do something with it. And America needed buyers. Desperately. The U.S. Treasury was about to issue hundreds of billions of dollars in new bonds to fund the bailouts. They needed someone to buy all that debt. Someone with deep pockets. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Enter China. But this wasn't charity. This was a strategy. Every dollar China loaned to America was a dollar of leverage. Every treasury bond they bought was a chain, invisible but unbreakable, connecting the two economies. Think about it like this. If you owe the bank $1,000, you have a problem. But if you owe the bank $1 trillion, the bank has a problem. China understood this better than anyone. They didn't just buy American debt. They became essential to the American system. They became the lender that America couldn't afford to upset. The creditor that was too important to challenge. And once you're in that position, you don't need missiles. You don't need aircraft carriers. You have something better: financial leverage. Now, if this sounds familiar, it should. Because this same game has been played before in history. Multiple times, and it always ends the same way. Let me take you back to 1956. Britain and France, two former superpowers, decide to invade Egypt to take control of the Suez Canal. It's classic colonial playbook stuff. They're going to show the world who's boss, but then America makes a phone call. President Eisenhower tells the British Prime Minister something simple: withdraw your troops, or we'll dump all the British pounds we're holding and crash your currency. Britain withdrew. Within months, the British Empire, which had ruled a quarter of the globe for centuries, was effectively over. Not because they lost a war, but because they lost financial independence. The lesson? Whoever controls the debt controls the destiny. And here's the kicker: America learned this lesson. They perfected it. For the next 50 years, American financial power was the real weapon. The dollar became the global reserve currency. America could print money, and the world had to accept it. It was the ultimate superpower move. Until China started using the same playbook, but they did it smarter, they did it slower. They did it so subtly that most Americans still haven't realized it's happening. Think about how genius this strategy is. China doesn't need to beat America militarily. They just need to make America dependent, economically intertwined. So interconnected that any conflict would be financial suicide for both sides. It's like a boxer who realizes he can't knock out his opponent, so instead he just holds on tight. He makes it impossible for either fighter to throw a punch without hurting themselves. Eventually, the referee stops the fight, and the guy who's still standing wins. That's what's happening right now between America and China. And most people are watching the wrong fight. So how exactly did China pull this off? How do you quietly dismantle an empire without anyone noticing until it's too late? It happened in 3 stages, and each one was brilliant. Stage 1: become indispensable. First, China made itself absolutely essential to the American economy. And they did it through something simple: manufacturing. In the 1990s and early 2000s, American companies started moving their factories to China. Cheaper labor, fewer regulations, higher profits. It made sense on paper. But here's what corporate executives didn't understand. They weren't just outsourcing jobs. They were outsourcing power. Today, try to go a single day without using something made in China. Your phone? Made in China. Your laptop? China. Your clothes, your furniture, your kids' toys, the microwave in your kitchen, all of it made in China. America became addicted to cheap Chinese goods. And once you're addicted, you're dependent. And once you're dependent, you're vulnerable. China didn't just become America's factory. They became America's lifeline, stage 2, by the debt. While American consumers were buying Chinese products, China was using those dollars to buy something else: American debt. Here's how it works. Every time you buy something from China, dollars flow out of America and into China. China then takes those dollars and buys U.S. Treasury bonds. Essentially, they're loaning the money back to America. It's like if you bought a car from a dealer, and then the dealer used your money to give you a loan for that same car. You're paying them, and then you're paying them interest on the money you already gave them. Genius, right? Diabolical, but genius. By 2008, China had become one of America's largest creditors. They were bankrolling the American lifestyle. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? Partially funded by Chinese loans. The stimulus packages? Chinese money. The entire American government was running on Chinese credit. And here's the scary part. Once you're that deep in debt to someone, you can't just walk away. You can't pick a fight. You can't even criticize them too harshly without risking economic consequences. That's leverage. Stage 3. Build the alternative. But China didn't stop there. Because being America's creditor still meant operating in America's system. Using American dollars. Playing by American rules. So China started building their own game. They launched the Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion project to build infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and Europe. They created the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to rival the World Bank. They started making deals in yuan instead of dollars. They've been quietly convincing countries to bypass the dollar entirely. They're not just playing America's game anymore. They're building their own casino. And they're inviting the whole world to play. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because China isn't just doing this to America. They've been running this exact same playbook on dozens of countries around the world. Let me tell you about Sri Lanka. A few years ago, China offered Sri Lanka a deal. Let us build you a massive port. We'll loan you the money. It'll boost your economy. Everyone wins. Sri Lanka said yes. The port got built. But here's the problem. Sri Lanka couldn't pay back the loan. So what did China do? They took the port. For 99 years. They now control a strategic port on one of the world's most important shipping routes. And they did it without firing a single shot. Just with a loan agreement and some fine print. This has happened in Pakistan, in Kenya, in Ecuador, in Montenegro. Country after country taking Chinese loans they can't repay and slowly losing control of their own infrastructure. It's colonialism with a credit card. And if you think America is immune to this, you haven't been paying attention. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. America is now dependent on Chinese manufacturing, Chinese lending, and Chinese markets. The relationship isn't equal anymore. It's not even close. When Trump started a trade war with China, who blinked first? American farmers started going bankrupt because they couldn't sell soybeans to China. American companies watched their stock prices tank. American consumers saw prices go up. China just waited it out. They bought soybeans from Brazil instead. They stimulated their domestic economy. They barely felt it. That's what happens when you're the creditor, not the debtor. When you're essential, not dependent. When you've spent decades carefully building leverage while your opponent was distracted. So why didn't anyone see this coming? How did the smartest people in Washington, on Wall Street, in Silicon Valley, how did they all miss this? Because it happened slowly. And humans are terrible at seeing slow-moving threats. Think about it. If China had launched a military invasion, America would have responded immediately. Aircraft carriers, troops, the whole 9 yards. But a slow accumulation of debt? Manufacturing dependence? That's boring. That's just economics. Nobody sounds the alarm for a spreadsheet. It's like boiling a frog. You don't throw the frog into boiling water, it'll jump out. You put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat. By the time the frog realizes what's happening, it's too late. There were warning signs though. People tried to sound the alarm. In 2010, economists were warning about Chinese debt holdings. In 2015, military strategists were talking about supply chain vulnerabilities. In 2020, the pandemic exposed just how dependent America was on Chinese manufacturing for everything from masks to medicine. But each time, the response was the same. Don't worry. It's fine. The relationship is mutually beneficial. Besides, what are we going to do about it? And that's the scariest part. That last question, what are we going to do about it? Because at this point, America can't just cut ties with China. The economies are too intertwined. It would be like trying to separate conjoined twins with a butter knife. Both patients would die on the table. China knows this. They've been counting on it. It's the perfect trap. You can see the bars of the cage, but you're locked inside. And the worst part? You walked in voluntarily, one decision at a time, over decades because each individual decision made sense in the moment. So is it game over? Is the American empire finished? Is this just a slow-motion collapse we're watching in real time? Not necessarily, but the clock is ticking. America still has advantages. The dollar is still the global reserve currency for now. The U.S. military is still the most powerful in the world. American innovation, American universities, American culture, these are still global forces. But advantages only matter if you use them. And right now, America is fighting the last war. We're still building aircraft carriers while China is building economic influence. We're still focused on military dominance while they're focused on financial control. We're playing chess while they're playing Go, a completely different game with completely different rules. What would it take to turn this around? First, America would need to acknowledge the problem. Really acknowledge it. Not just politicians giving speeches about bringing jobs back, but a fundamental recognition that economic dependence is a national security threat. Second, massive investment in domestic manufacturing. Not just talking about it, actually doing it. Making things in America again, even if it costs more, even if it hurts short-term profits. Third, diversifying supply chains. Spreading manufacturing across multiple countries so no single nation has complete leverage. Fourth, reducing the debt. Massively, because every dollar of debt is a dollar of vulnerability. Fifth, building alternatives to Chinese infrastructure projects. Offering developing countries better deals than the Belt and Road Initiative. Actually competing for global influence instead of just assuming America will always be on top. Is any of this happening? Some of it, slowly, maybe too slowly. The CHIPS Act is bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to America. Some companies are reshoring production. There's more awareness now than there was 5 years ago. But China has a 30-year head start. And they're not sitting still either, so let's play this out. What does the future actually look like? Scenario 1. America wakes up, gets serious, and manages to disentangle itself from Chinese dependence over the next decade. It's painful, it's expensive, but it's possible. The relationship becomes more balanced. Both countries remain powerful, but neither has complete leverage over the other. The world settles into a new equilibrium with two major powers. Scenario 2. The current trajectory continues. America's debt keeps growing. Chinese influence keeps expanding. Slowly, gradually, the dollar loses its status as the global reserve currency. Maybe it's replaced by a basket of currencies. Maybe by China's digital yuan. Either way, America loses the ultimate financial superpower tool. The empire doesn't collapse dramatically. It just fades like Britain after Suez. Scenario 3. Something breaks. A financial crisis, a military conflict, a pandemic, some trigger event that forces a sudden reckoning. Both economies crash. Global chaos. This is the nightmare scenario, and honestly, the one both sides are desperately trying to avoid. Which one happens? That's the trillion-dollar question, literally. Here's what I think. We're already past the point of easy solutions. The debt trap has been set, and America is in it. The question now isn't, can we avoid it? The question is, how do we escape it? And escape is possible. History is full of empires that seemed unstoppable until they weren't. Rome, the Mongols, the British Empire, the Soviet Union, they all fell. But history is also full of powers that adapted and survived. Japan rebuilt after World War II. Germany came back from devastation. Britain found a new role in the world. America can too. But it requires something that's in short supply right now: long-term thinking, political courage, and the willingness to make hard choices that might not pay off for years or decades. It requires admitting that the post-Cold War moment of unchallenged American dominance is over. That we're in a new game now with new rules and new competitors who've been studying our playbook. Most importantly, it requires understanding that this isn't really about China. It's about us. About the choices we made, the debts we accumulated, the dependencies we built. China didn't force America to outsource manufacturing. China didn't force America to run massive deficits year after year. China didn't force Americans to buy cheap goods and finance it all with credit cards. China just saw the opportunity and took it. They played the game brilliantly. You can't really blame them for that. The question is, what's America going to do about it? Look, here's the bottom line. The debt trap nobody saw coming? It's not coming anymore. It's here. It's been here for years. We just weren't paying attention. China didn't bankrupt America's empire with missiles or invasions. They did it with loans and leverage, with factories and supply chains, with patience and planning. They turned America's own capitalist system into the weapon. And the scariest part? Most Americans still have no idea it's happening. They see the fights about trade deals and tariffs on the news, but they don't see the bigger picture. The slow shift of power, the quiet erosion of independence. But now you know. Now you've seen how it works. How empires don't just fall, they get bought out from under their own feet. So what do we do with this information? That's up to you. Maybe you start paying attention to where your products come from. Maybe you start asking politicians about national debt and economic dependency. Maybe you just spread awareness that this is happening. Because the first step to escaping a trap is realizing you're in one. If this video made you think, if it opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, do me a favor, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to show this to more people. Share it with someone who needs to see it. Because this is a conversation we all need to be having. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Deep dives into the economic forces shaping our world. The patterns of history repeating themselves, the stories behind the headlines, and drop a comment. Tell me, do you think America can escape this debt trap? Or is this empire's sunset already written? I genuinely want to know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious. Stay informed and stay awake. Because empires fall when nobody's paying attention.